Oliver is in Leyland. Oliver, what would you like to say?
I like to tell you why I voted for Brexit.
Okay. Shall I guess?
Have you ever believed something so strongly, only to discover later that the entire belief was built on nothing more than a conversation, a rumor, or something somebody claimed to have read somewhere? Because what you're about to hear is a perfect example of how one of the biggest political decisions in modern British history was influenced by exactly that kind of thinking. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now pay very close attention to this exchange because it reveals something much bigger than just one caller's opinion on Brexit. James O'Brien starts asking a simple question. The caller explains that his views about Europe were heavily influenced by a friend he worked with. According to him, this friend had supposedly read all the important documents and understood what was really happening behind the scenes. At first, that might sound convincing. After all, we've all met someone who presents themselves as the person who's done all the research, the person who claims to know what everyone else is missing. But then James asks the obvious follow-up question. What documents? And suddenly the entire foundation starts wobbling. The caller admits he has absolutely no idea. Think about that for a second. A major political belief. A belief strong enough to influence how someone viewed Britain's relationship with Europe. A belief that would eventually contribute to one of the most consequential political movements in decades. And when asked what evidence it was based on? Nothing. No document names. No reports. No studies. No facts. Just confidence that somebody else must have known what they were talking about. And honestly, that moment captures so much of the Brexit debate in a nutshell. Not necessarily evidence, not necessarily policy, not necessarily detailed economic arguments, just a powerful feeling that somebody somewhere had uncovered a hidden truth. What's especially interesting is that this conversation is happening at a time when even some of Brexit's former defenders are beginning to rethink the entire project. We're now seeing figures from across the political and media landscape openly questioning whether Brexit delivered what was promised. And that's what makes this next discussion so fascinating. Because when prominent conservative voices start acknowledging that the conversation about rejoining the European Union may eventually need to happen, it raises a difficult question. If Brexit was such a clear success, why are so many of its former supporters suddenly sounding far less certain than they once did? That's where this call becomes incredibly revealing, because what starts as a simple conversation about one man's views quickly turns into something much bigger, an examination of how political narratives are formed, how people become convinced of ideas, and what happens when those ideas are finally subjected to direct scrutiny. And trust me, the deeper this conversation goes, the more uncomfortable it becomes for the person trying to defend Brexit.
Oliver is in Leyland. Oliver, what would you like to say?
I like to tell you why I voted for Brexit.
Okay. Shall I guess?
What?
Shall I guess?
Yeah, have a guess, yeah.
Okay. Is it because you wanted to make our own laws and withdraw from the European superstate that we never agreed to join in the first place?
To some extent, that, yes.
Yeah, because that's all nonsense.
What?
Well,
No,
we did agree to join much more than just a single market back in the early 70s. Ted Heath wrote extensively about it. It's not a superstate, and we don't really have the. Oh, go on, never mind.
My dad was a senior officer in one of the big trade unions.
Yeah,
and he said. It was a bit of a joking conversation. He said, you don't like that, do you? And I said, well, yeah, joining a common market seems like a good idea to me. And I couldn't work out. I'd never asked him why he didn't like it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, you do realise you're voting for the United States of Europe. That's what it's all about. And I said, I don't want that. I want the common market. I think the common market's a good idea.
Yeah.
And so
who was your friend? And what was his perspective? What was his field of research? Where did he get this conclusion from?
It was somebody I'd worked with, but I'm convinced he'd read all the documents. He was
which documents do you think he'd read, Oliver?
I don't know.
No, but you changed your view on European Union membership as a consequence of what he said.
my dad had already told me.
Right.
And I mean, he knew people like Harold Wilson.
Yeah.
He only rubbed shoulders with him. He didn't. Anyway, and so I voted against, and I thought, well, that's it. We're
But what were you
in.
voting for?
What was I was voting against going into what was then called the common market.
Right. So we're going back to the early 70s now, are we?
Oh yes.
Right. I'm just
Yes.
interested in why you don't regret voting to leave the European Union, given the long, long lists of broken promises and irrefutable damage that we've been detailing since 10 o'clock this morning.
It was magic when I heard we were going to get a vote to come out.
It was a brooch of purest green.
No. You're making that's a love.
So what were you
you're a wonderful
celebrating?
user of words,
What
but
were you
it-
celebrating? Well, I'm not as good as your mate who told you that we were going to be joining an independent, what was it, the United States of Europe. He was even better at words than me because he'd read all the documents. So what were you celebrating when you felt that wonderful euphoria?
Because
Yeah.
when I think it was Maastricht. I don't really
No,
know.
I just want to focus on one moment. We're jumping through the decades like Doctor Who at the moment. That day, that night, when the result came in and you said you felt, I think the word you used was fantastic or amazing, that euphoria of that moment, what were you celebrating?
That we were out and
Yes, but what did that, well,
probably-
that's just a word, isn't it? What did that mean? What was
did
going
it
to
mean
get
to
better?
me?
What was going to get better for your country or yourself?
we were going to be able to renegotiate. And
But David Cameron had just undertaken a massive renegotiation. You know that. So
Yeah, but
what was going to get better? Because we now know that everything's got worse, but you still
were
think it was a
talking
good
about-
idea. So what was going to get? What made you feel euphoric that night in June?
Well, I didn't believe it was going to happen.
But you wanted it to. We're still. You've been on now for 4 or 5 minutes, and we still don't know what you wanted.
I was expecting when they were talking, was it the Canada deal they were talking about,
Yeah,
or
you
the
see,
Norway
you've jumped
deal?
again now. We're just talking about June 2016. You were celebrating. What did you
Yes.
win?
What did I win? We won our. Oh, you're going to say. You're going to say.
You're doing it again. I'm just asking you what you won. Don't worry about Canada. Don't worry about the 1970s. Don't worry about Harold Wilson. Don't worry about anything that I might be about to say. Just tell me what you won.
Well, we were going to be alongside the United States of Europe.
What did
not
you
in it.
win? What did you win?
Well, I thought we won the ability to get rid of the bits of the United States of Europe that I didn't want.
For example?
Well, the political side of it.
Yeah, go on. What? What was the thing you wanted to wave goodbye to first?
I was making a joke that night and saying, send some gunboats out to sink foreign fishing boats.
Yeah, hilarious. So what was the thing that you wanted to get rid of first?
The thing that I wanted to get rid of first, well, everything to do with...
No, just not everything, just one thing.
One thing.
Yeah,
I
just one.
wanted to...
You've had 6 years to think about it.
Yeah.
Actually, you've had 40. No, don't let me distract you from the central question. I appreciate you're not going to be able to tell me what it is you want. So what was it you were looking forward to getting rid of?
No, what I wanted us to go back to the common market that I thought we were signing up for.
But you voted to leave it. You voted to leave
Yeah, I
the
did.
single market
I
and the
wanted-
customs union. So how was that going to help us go back to it?
I didn't vote to leave the common market.
You did.
I voted to leave the European Union.
Yes, but they were the same thing by 2016, Oliver.
Yes.
So anyway,
But-
what you said you couldn't wait to get rid of the political stuff and all the difference.
Yeah.
If you so, what? Give me an example of that. The stuff that you were hoping to, or even perhaps, if I could be so bold, an example of the things you're glad that we have now got rid of.
For example, not being able to only that the European Parliament is only able to vote on things
yes,
that are put.
But I'm asking about the things that they have voted on. I'm not interested in the procedure of the Parliament, the things that you couldn't wait to get rid of, the things that you were bound by, the rules or the laws that you had to abide by, the regulations that you had to observe, the changes to your life that had been implemented by membership that you couldn't wait to shrug off. What were they?
Well, we have to go back to when Thatcher decided to.
You're back in your TARDIS. It was June 2016. You're celebrating the things that you don't have to do anymore. What were they?
I'm 75 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Yes, thank you. And the whole point is this business has been on the news ever since we signed up to join. And every time something happened, it was worse for us.
How? Can you give me one example? Do you think?
Yes, I can.
Go on then, because it's been a while.
Yes, I can.
Go on then.
But when Margaret Thatcher decided that we were going to be the money changers of Europe,
right,
and we were at that point a fairly important manufacturing country.
Yes.
And you're going to say yes, but we sent all our manufacturing to China.
You keep telling me what I'm going to say. I just wish you'd concentrate on what you're going to say when I ask you what you actually won. It's for the final time, because I'm late for the news and I don't want to interrupt your birthday preparations. What did you win? I say, here's the prize that you celebrated. What are you pointing at?
I'm pointing at the common market.
Right. Have a great birthday, won't you? Lottie Morley's here with your headlines.
And in the end, that's what made this conversation so revealing. What you've just watched wasn't simply a debate between a radio host and a Brexit supporter. It was a case study in what happens when deeply held political beliefs are finally put under the microscope. Because here's the thing. Oliver never came across as malicious. He wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to deceive anyone. In many ways, he represents thousands, perhaps even millions of ordinary voters who genuinely believed they were voting for something better. The problem is that when James repeatedly asked the most basic question imaginable, what exactly did you gain? The answer never came. Not because Oliver refused to answer, because he couldn't answer. And that distinction matters. Throughout the call, we heard references to decades-old political debates, warnings about a so-called European superstate, stories from friends, conversations with family members, and vague feelings about what Britain was supposedly becoming. But whenever the discussion returned to a simple, practical question about what Brexit would actually improve, the conversation drifted somewhere else. That's what made the exchange so striking. The further James dug, the more the argument seemed to dissolve. And perhaps the most ironic moment of all came when Oliver explained that what he really wanted was a return to the common market. James immediately spotted the contradiction. The modern equivalent of the common market was the very arrangement that Brexit ended. In other words, the one concrete outcome Oliver appeared to support was the very thing the Leave vote helped remove. Think about how extraordinary that is. After years of political campaigning, endless headlines, countless speeches, and one of the most divisive national debates in modern British history, the central promise still seemed impossible to define in practical terms. No specific law that needed to disappear. No regulation that was clearly harming everyday life. No measurable benefit that could be pointed to and celebrated. Just a broad feeling that things would somehow be better. And that's where this conversation becomes bigger than Brexit itself. Because history is full of political movements that succeed by appealing to emotion first and detail second. People are often asked to vote for a vision, a feeling, or a promise of national renewal. But eventually, every political project reaches the same moment of truth. The slogans fade, the campaigns end, and reality takes over. At that point, results matter more than rhetoric. Outcomes matter more than promises, and difficult questions become impossible to avoid. That's why conversations like this continue to resonate years after the referendum. They force people to confront the gap between what was promised and what was delivered. And perhaps that's also why we're seeing more commentators, more journalists, and even some former supporters of Brexit openly reassessing what happened. When voices that once defended the project begin questioning its long-term success, it signals something important. It suggests that the debate is no longer just about ideology. It's increasingly about evidence, outcomes, and whether the original promises stand up to scrutiny. For many voters, that's an uncomfortable conversation. But it's also a necessary one. Because democracy depends on being willing to look back honestly and ask whether major decisions achieved what they were supposed to achieve. And that brings us to you. After hearing this exchange, do you think James O'Brien exposed a fundamental weakness in the Brexit argument? Or do you think the caller simply failed to articulate a stronger case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.